The Krylos fleet finally disappeared into the depths of space, leaving Earth's skies eerily quiet. For the first time in weeks, humanity could breathe a little easier. The cloaking field, though still active, was slowly powered down to conserve what little energy remained. Rachel Monroe and Daniel Kim collapsed into chairs in the lab, their bodies exhausted but their spirits lifted. They had done the impossible, hidden an entire planet from one of the galaxy's most feared species. Jacob Carter stood on a hill outside Washington, D.C., staring up at the stars. The weight of the past weeks pressed heavily on him, but there was also a sense of pride. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger than ever. He thought about the Galactic Council and their initial ridicule. Now, those same leaders were watching Earth with newfound respect, and perhaps even a hint of fear. They underestimated us, Jacob murmured to himself. But they won't make that mistake again. President Laura Hayes addressed the world in a historic broadcast, her voice steady and resolute. "Today, we stand united," she said. "We have shown the galaxy that Earth is not a planet to be trifled with. Our strength lies not just in our technology, but in our determination to protect what we hold dear. This is not the end of our journey. It is only the beginning." Her words resonated across the globe, sparking a wave of hope and resilience. People who had once felt small and insignificant now saw themselves as part of something greater. Earth was no longer just a fragile blue dot in the cosmos. It was a symbol of survival against all odds. Rachel returned to her lab the next morning, determined to refine the cloaking technology. She knew the Krylos might return, or worse, other threats could emerge from the stars. Humanity couldn't rely on hiding forever. "We need to innovate," she told Daniel. "This prototype saved us, but it's not enough. We have to think bigger." Daniel nodded, already sketching out new designs. What if we could adapt the cloak for individual ships, or create weapons based on the same principles? Rachel smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. Let's push the boundaries of what's possible." Meanwhile, Jacob traveled back to the Galactic Council, this time as an equal rather than an outsider. His speech before the assembly was met with silence, not the mocking kind, but the thoughtful, contemplative kind. "Earth has proven itself," he said. "We may not have your centuries of advancement, but we have something just as valuable: the will to fight for our future. If you choose to stand with us, we will be worthy allies." His words struck a chord. Several species pledged their support, offering resources, knowledge, and protection. Others remained cautious, but the tide had shifted. Earth was no longer a laughingstock. It was a force to be reckoned with. As days turned into weeks, life on Earth began to stabilize. Cities rebuilt, families reunited, and people looked to the stars with a mix of awe and determination. Emily Dawson published her account of the invasion, titled "*The Day Earth Vanished*". Her article became a global sensation, reminding humanity of how close they had come to disaster, and how far they had come since. One evening, Rachel and Daniel stood outside the lab, gazing at the night sky. The stars twinkled brightly, their beauty untouched by the chaos that had unfolded. "Do you think we'll ever truly be safe?" Daniel asked, his voice soft. Rachel hesitated before answering. "I don't know, but I do know this. We're ready to face whatever comes next, and that's more than we could say a month ago." In the vastness of the galaxy, Earth's stories spread like wildfire. The planet that had once been dismissed as weak and irrelevant was now a beacon of hope and a warning. Humanity had risen to meet its challenges, proving that even the smallest light could shine brightly in the darkness. And as Rachel whispered to herself under her breath, "This is just the beginning," she knew it was true. Earth had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same again. Weeks passed, and the Krylos fleet lingered in Earth's orbit, their frustration growing with each passing day. Commander Varnock paced the bridge of his flagship, his armored boots clanking against the metal floor. His glowing eyes darted between the sensor displays, searching for any sign of the missing planet. Earth cannot simply disappear, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. It must be here, somewhere. His crew worked tirelessly, recalibrating sensors and deploying scout ships to scan every corner of the solar system. But no matter how hard they searched, the results were always the same: empty space where Earth should have been. The once mighty Krylos fleet, known for its swift and brutal conquests, was now stuck in a stalemate. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy they couldn't see or touch. Back on Earth, the strain of maintaining the cloaking field was taking its toll. Rachel Monroe and Daniel Kim barely left the lab, their eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. The system was running on borrowed time, held together by sheer willpower and desperate ingenuity. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the hum of the machine had become a constant, oppressive presence. "We can't keep this up much longer," Daniel admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "The system is going to burn itself out." "I know," Rachel replied, her voice tight with determination. "But we don't have a choice. If the field collapses now, everything we've done will be for nothing." Jacob Carter visited the lab frequently, bringing updates from the outside world. The Krylos hadn't given up their search, but they were losing momentum. Their ships drifted aimlessly in orbit, their commanders arguing over what to do next. Some suggested widening the search beyond the solar system, while others pushed for a full retreat. Humanity's gambit had worked, for now. But Jacob knew it was only a matter of time before the Krylos made a move. In the meantime, Jacob turned his attention to the Galactic Council. He reached out to sympathetic factions, sharing Earth's story and appealing for support. To his surprise, many were willing to listen. The disappearance of an entire planet had shaken the galaxy, and whispers of humanity's hidden strength began to spread. "You were right to mock us before," Jacob told the council during a private meeting. "We were weak. But weakness can forge resilience. Give us a chance, and we'll prove ourselves worthy of standing beside you." Not everyone was convinced, but Jacob's words struck a chord with some. A delegation of neutral species offered to mediate talks between Earth and the Krylos, hoping to broker a peaceful resolution. It was a risky proposition. If the Krylos refused to negotiate, humanity would be left exposed. But Jacob saw it as their best chance. "We need allies," he told President Laura Hayes during a late-night call. "If we can get the council on our side, the Krylos won't dare attack again." Hayes agreed, though her tone was cautious. "Just be careful, Jacob. Trust is a fragile thing, especially in the galaxy." As negotiations began, the Krylos grew increasingly restless. Their resources were dwindling, and their reputation was at stake. Varnak knew that retreating would be seen as a sign of weakness, but staying meant risking further losses. Finally, after weeks of indecision, he issued a command: "Withdraw." For now. The Krylos fleet began to disperse, their ships vanishing into the depths of space. For Earth, it was a moment of relief, but also uncertainty. The cloaking field was still active, but Rachel knew it wouldn't last forever. When it failed, humanity would need more than technology to survive. They would need unity, courage, and the trust of the galaxy. As Rachel deactivated part of the field to conserve power, she looked out at the stars with Daniel by her side. "This isn't over," she said softly. "But we've bought ourselves time. And sometimes that's all you need to change the game." Far above, the Krylos retreated, their glowing ships fading into the darkness. But Commander Varnak's final words echoed through the void. "This isn't finished. Not yet." Humanity had survived its first test, but the galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were far from over. The news of Earth's disappearance spread like wildfire through the galaxy. At first, it was dismissed as a rumor, a glitch in the sensors, or some kind of cosmic anomaly. But when multiple species confirmed that the blue-green planet had vanished without a trace, whispers turned into shockwaves. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session aboard the Ecliptica asterisk, their usual air of superiority replaced with unease. Zarnak, The reptilian council member who had mocked Earth just months earlier now stood at the center of the chamber, his green scales shimmering faintly under the artificial light. "This is impossible," he hissed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "A planet cannot simply vanish. Not even the most advanced civilizations possess such technology." Other council members murmured in agreement, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright fear. A being made entirely of light floated forward, its voice echoing softly. Earth was primitive, it said. Their defenses were laughable. How could they achieve something like this? Jacob Carter watched the scene unfold from a private viewing room, his arms crossed over his chest. He had been invited back to the council, not as a representative of Earth, but as an observer. For once, the mockery was gone, replaced by a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Jacob couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction as he listened to the council debate what had happened. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe and Daniel Kim worked tirelessly to maintain the cloaking field. Back on Earth, the strain on the system was becoming unbearable. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the hum of the machine grew louder, almost deafening. Rachel ignored the chaos around her, focusing solely on keeping the field active. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the controls, her mind racing with thoughts of what would happen if they failed. Would humanity survive? Or would Earth become just another conquered world? In the skies above, the Krylos fleet remained cautious. Commander Varnock paced aboard his flagship, his glowing eyes narrowed in suspicion. "They cannot have vanished entirely," he growled, addressing his crew. "There is always a weakness. Find it." Unbeknownst to the Krylos, the weakness wasn't in the cloaking field, it was in humanity's limited resources. The EMP weapons carried by the stealth fighters were powerful, but they could only disable so many ships before running out of ammunition. Each strike brought hope, but also the risk of discovery. One mistake, and the entire operation would collapse. As the hours ticked by, Rachel kept glancing at the clock. The cloaking field was holding, but barely. Energy levels were dropping faster than expected, and the strain was beginning to show. "We need more power," she told Daniel urgently. "Divert everything you can spare." Daniel nodded, rerouting auxiliary systems to keep the field stable. "It's going to be close," he admitted. "Really close." Close was all they had. Close meant survival, for now. And in the vastness of space, where Earth had once been mocked and dismissed, humanity was proving that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. Back on Earth, President Laura Hayes addressed the United Nations in a closed-door meeting. "This is not the end," she said firmly. "It's the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. We've shown the galaxy that we are not weak. We are survivors." Jacob stood beside her, nodding in agreement. "The council laughed at us because they didn't understand us," he added. "But now they'll see what we're capable of." As the Krylos continued their futile search, humanity prepared for the next phase. The cloaking field had bought them time, but everyone knew it wouldn't last forever. When the field eventually collapsed, Earth would need allies, and Jacob was determined to find them. He began reaching out to sympathetic factions within the Galactic Council, hoping to build bridges where none had existed before. For now, Earth remained hidden, a ghost among the stars. But the real battle was just beginning. The cloaking field shimmered faintly, its energy levels dangerously low. Rachel Monroe clenched her fists as she stared at the monitors, her heart pounding in her chest. The strain on the system was almost unbearable, and warning alarms blared softly in the background. Daniel Kim worked frantically beside her, rerouting power from auxiliary systems to keep the field stable. "It's not going to hold much longer," he said, his voice tight with worry. "I know," Rachel replied, her eyes locked on the readings. "But it has to. Just a little longer." Above Earth, the Krylos fleet regrouped, their scout ships sweeping the area for any sign of the humans who had dared to strike back. Commander Varnock's glowing eyes narrowed as he studied the empty space where part of Earth should have been. "This invisibility trick won't save them forever," he growled, turning to his crew. "Expand the search. They cannot hide indefinitely." Meanwhile, Alex Rivera and Sophia Bennett led their squadron back toward Earth, their stealth fighters battered but intact. As they approached the planet, Alex glanced at the cloaked region below. "That thing is holding together by a thread," he muttered over the comms. "We need to finish this before it collapses." Sophia nodded, her hands steady on the controls. "Agreed. Let's take out another wave of their ships while we still can." The human pilots dove back into the fray, targeting more of the Krylos vessels. Each EMP blast sent waves of electromagnetic energy rippling through the alien fleet, disabling engines and cutting off communications. But the Krylos adapted quickly, deploying countermeasures to shield their ships from further attacks. The battle grew fiercer, with both sides taking heavy losses. Back in Colorado, Rachel made a desperate decision. "Shut down everything non-essential," she ordered Daniel. "Divert every last bit of power to the cloaking field. If we lose it now, Earth is finished." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But if we do this, there's no turning back. The system will burn itself out." "Then let it burn," Rachel said firmly. "As long as Earth stays hidden, it'll be worth it." With every available resource funneled into the cloaking device, the field stabilized, for now. But the strain was visible. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the hum of the machine grew louder, almost deafening. Rachel ignored the chaos around her, focusing solely on keeping the field active. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would happen if they failed. Would humanity survive? Or would Earth become just another conquered world? In the skies above, the Krylos began to realize that something was wrong. Their sensors detected fluctuations in the cloaking field, tiny cracks that hinted at its impending failure. Varnok's lips curled into a cruel smile. "They're running out of time," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Prepare for a full-scale assault. When the cloak falls, we crush them." Jacob Carter watched the unfolding events from a secure command center, his face pale with worry. He knew the cloaking field wouldn't last much longer, and when it failed, the Krylos would descend upon Earth with overwhelming force. "Rachel, how much time do we have?" he asked over the comms. "Not enough," Rachel replied, her voice strained. "Maybe 10 minutes, if we're lucky." Jacob clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "General Cole, we need to evacuate civilians from the areas most likely to be targeted. Get everyone underground. Now." General Cole gave a sharp nod, barking orders to his team. Across the globe, emergency alerts blared, urging people to seek shelter immediately. Cities emptied as millions fled to bunkers and safe zones, their faces filled with fear and uncertainty. As the clock ticked down, Rachel felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She had done everything she could. Whether it was enough or not was out of her hands now. "Come on," she whispered, staring at the flickering monitors. "Just a little longer." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Rachel made one last adjustment to the cloaking field. With a surge of energy, the device expanded its range, enveloping the entire planet in a shimmering veil of invisibility. For a brief moment, Earth vanished completely from sight. Varnok stared at his sensors in disbelief. What is this?" he roared, slamming his fist against the console. "Find them." But there was nothing to find. Earth was gone, or so it seemed. As the Krylos fleet hovered uncertainly in orbit, humanity held its breath. The cloaking field had worked, but it was only a temporary solution. The real question was, how long could they keep the illusion alive? And what would happen when the truth came to light? President Laura Hayes sat at the head of a long conference table in an underground bunker, her face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. Around her were Earth's top leaders, scientists, and military personnel, including Jacob Carter, Rachel Monroe, General Matthew Cole, and Emily Dawson, who had been brought in to document the unfolding events. The air was thick with tension as they discussed their next move. "We've got one shot at this," General Cole said, his voice firm but calm. "The cloaking field has given us an edge, but it won't last forever. We need to hit the Krylos hard while they're still disoriented." Rachel nodded, leaning forward slightly. "The cloak is protecting a critical section of North America right now, but expanding it to cover the entire planet isn't possible. It would drain all our power within minutes. What we can do is use it strategically to shield key areas while launching surprise attacks." Jacob chimed in, his tone urgent. "We should focus on disabling their command ships first. If we take out their leadership, the rest of the fleet might fall into chaos." Emily listened intently, scribbling notes on her tablet. Though she wasn't a scientist or soldier, her role was just as vital. She needed to ensure humanity's story survived, no matter what happened next. She couldn't help but feel a pang of fear as she looked around the room. These people were planning Earth's last stand, and the weight of that responsibility hung heavy over them all. General Cole outlined the plan. Stealth fighters equipped with EMP weapons would target the largest Krylos vessels, focusing on those emitting high levels of energy. The likely command centers. Pilots Alex Rivera and Sophia Bennett led the squadrons, each craft painted black to blend into the darkness of space. Their mission was clear but perilous. They had to get close enough to fire without being detected. As the operation began, Rachel and Daniel stayed glued to their monitors, keeping a close eye on the cloaking field's stability. Every second mattered. Energy reserves were dwindling faster than expected, and the strain on the system was becoming unbearable. "We're pushing the limits here," Daniel warned, glancing nervously at Rachel. "If we push too far, the whole thing could collapse." "I know," Rachel replied, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. "Just keep it stable for a little longer. That's all we need." Above Earth, the stealth fighters moved silently through the void, closing in on the Krylos fleet. The alien ships loomed ahead, their jagged forms casting eerie shadows against the stars. Alex's voice crackled over the comms. "All right, team. Let's make this count. Fire on my mark." One by one, the pilots locked onto their targets and launched EMP blasts. The pulses of electromagnetic energy struck the Krylos ships, causing their systems to sputter and fail. Lights flickered, engines died, and several vessels drifted lifelessly in space. Cheers erupted among the human forces as the first wave of attacks succeeded, but the celebration was short-lived. Commander Varnock roared in fury aboard his flagship, slamming his armored fist against a control panel. "Countermeasures," he bellowed. "Find their weak points and crush them." The remaining Krylos ships regrouped quickly, deploying smaller scout vessels to hunt for the attackers. Alex and Sophia narrowly avoided detection, weaving through debris fields and firing decoy flares to throw off enemy sensors. "They're onto us," Sophia said, her voice tense. "We need to pull back before they surround us." Back on Earth, Rachel watched the readings anxiously. The cloaking field was holding, for now, but cracks were starting to form. Warning lights flashed on the control panels, and alarms blared softly in the background. "It's going to fail soon," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Jacob placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've done everything you can, Rachel. Now it's up to the fighters." High above, Alex and Sophia executed a daring retreat, leading their squadron back toward the safety of Earth's atmosphere. Behind them, the disabled Krylos ships floated like ghostly remnants of the battle. But the fight was far from over. Commander Varnock wasn't about to give up, not when victory was still within reach. As the cloaking field began to falter, Rachel made a split-second decision. "Divert all remaining power to sustain the field," she ordered. "We'll deal with the consequences later." For now, Earth remained hidden, but the cost of keeping it that way was mounting. Humanity had struck a blow against the invaders, but the war was only beginning. And as the seconds ticked away, everyone involved knew the hardest choices were yet to come. The cloaking field shimmered faintly as it enveloped a small section of North America, rendering everything beneath it invisible to the Krylos fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, the relentless bombardment paused. The aliens, confused by the sudden disappearance of part of their target, hesitated. Their ships hovered in formation, scanning the area with advanced sensors, but all they detected was empty space. Rachel Monroe wiped the sweat from her brow as she monitored the device's energy levels. The prototype was holding steady, for now, but she knew it wouldn't last forever. The cloaking field required immense amounts of power, and the system was already showing signs of strain. "We've bought some time," Rachel said to Daniel Kim, her voice tight with urgency. "But not much. This thing can only stay active for a few hours at most." Daniel nodded, his eyes glued to the monitors displaying the device's status. "What happens if it fails while the Krylos are still out there?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "They'll see us again," Rachel replied grimly. "And when they do, they'll destroy what's left." Meanwhile, Jacob Carter contacted President Laura Hayes to update her on the situation. He explained how Rachel's cloaking device had temporarily shielded part of Earth from the Krylos, giving humanity a brief reprieve. But even as he spoke, his tone betrayed his concern. "Madam President, this isn't a solution, it's a delay. If we don't act fast, the Krylos will figure out what's happening. And then—" President Hayes cut him off, her voice firm despite the gravity of the situation. "Jacob, I understand the stakes, but we need options, real ones. What can we do to fight back?" Jacob hesitated before answering. "We use the cloak to protect key areas while launching counterattacks. It's risky, but it might be our only chance." At the same time, General Matthew Cole convened an emergency meeting with Earth's top military leaders. The general was a grizzled man in his late 50s with sharp features and a commanding presence. He listened intently as reports came in about the Krylos confusion and the success of the cloaking field. "All right," he said finally, slamming his fist on the table. "If they're disoriented, we hit them hard and fast. Stealth fighters equipped with EMP weapons, we'll disable their ships one by one." The plan was risky, but there was no other option. Pilots volunteered immediately, knowing full well the odds were against them. Among them were Alex Rivera and Sophia Bennett, two seasoned pilots who had trained together for years. As they suited up, Alex turned to Sophia with a wry smile. "Think this'll work?" he asked. Sophia shrugged, adjusting her helmet. "Doesn't matter. We're doing it anyway." Back in Colorado, Rachel and Daniel worked tirelessly to stabilize the cloaking field. Every second counted. They knew that if the field collapsed prematurely, the Krylos would resume their assault without mercy. Rachel's hands trembled as she adjusted the controls, her mind racing with calculations. "Come on," she muttered under her breath. "Just hold a little longer." As the stealth fighters launched into the sky, Rachel watched from her lab, her heart pounding. She felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. Humanity was fighting back, not just with brute force, but with ingenuity and courage. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. Above Earth, the Krylos fleet remained cautious, their sensors sweeping the planet for any sign of movement. Commander Varnock paced aboard his flagship, his glowing eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Find them," he growled, addressing his crew. "They cannot have vanished entirely. There is always a weakness." Unbeknownst to the Krylos, the weakness wasn't in the cloaking field. It was in humanity's limited resources. The EMP weapons carried by the stealth fighters were powerful, but they could only disable so many ships before running out of ammunition. Each strike brought hope, but also the risk of discovery. One mistake, and the entire operation would collapse. As the hours ticked by, Rachel kept glancing at the clock. The cloaking field was holding, but barely. Energy levels were dropping faster than expected, and the strain was beginning to show. "We need more power," she told Daniel urgently. "Divert everything you can spare." Daniel nodded, rerouting auxiliary systems to keep the field stable. "It's going to be close," he admitted. "Really close. Close was all they had. Close meant survival. For now. And in the vastness of space, where Earth had once been mocked and dismissed, humanity was proving that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. The calm before the storm didn't last long. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, the unthinkable happened. The skies above Earth lit up with a sight that no one was prepared for. Thousands of ships, dark, jagged, and menacing, descended from the heavens like a swarm of locusts. They weren't sleek or elegant like the vessels of the Galactic Council. These ships were brutal in design, their surfaces covered in sharp edges and glowing red markings that pulsed like warning signals. People around the world stopped what they were doing to stare upward in shock and fear. News outlets scrambled to cover the event, broadcasting live footage of the alien fleet as it surrounded Earth. Jacob Carter watched from his apartment in Washington, D.C., his heart pounding in his chest. He had feared this moment would come, but now that it was here, he felt paralyzed. "It's the Krylos," he whispered to himself, recognizing the ships from the descriptions he'd heard at the summit. The Krylos wasted no time making their intentions clear. A massive holographic projection appeared in the sky, visible across the entire planet. It showed the towering form of Commander Varnock, the leader of the Krylos forces. His appearance was terrifying. His body covered in thick armored plates, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. His voice boomed through every communication channel, deep and guttural, sending shivers down the spines of everyone who heard it. "Humans of Earth," Varnock began, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are weak. You are insignificant. Your kind has squandered its resources and shown no respect for the power of the stars. We have come to claim your world. Surrender now, and we may spare some of you as slaves. Resist, and you will be annihilated." Panic erupted worldwide. Streets filled with people running in all directions, unsure of where to go or what to do. Governments issued emergency alerts, urging citizens to stay indoors and prepare for the worst. Military bases sprang into action, launching outdated fighter jets and activating the few orbital defense systems Earth possessed. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Krylos fleet was overwhelming, their technology far beyond anything humanity could muster. Jacob immediately called Rachel Monroe. She answered on the first ring, her voice tense but focused. "Rachel, they're here," Jacob said, his words rushed. "We need to activate the cloaking device. Now." "I know," Rachel replied. "Daniel and I are already working on it. But Jacob, it's not ready. If we try to use it too soon, it could fail, or worse, destabilize, and cause catastrophic damage." "We don't have a choice," Jacob snapped. "If we don't do something, Earth is finished." Rachel hesitated for a moment, then gave a firm nod, though Jacob couldn't see it. "All right, give us 30 minutes. That's all we need to set it up." As Rachel and Daniel worked frantically in the lab, the Krylos launched their first wave of attacks. Cities crumbled under relentless bombardment, skyscrapers collapsing into clouds of dust and debris. Fires spread uncontrollably, painting the night sky with an eerie orange glow. The screams of terrified civilians echoed through the streets as chaos consumed the planet. Back in Colorado, Rachel monitored the progress of the cloaking device. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, sweat dripping down her forehead. Come on," she muttered under her breath. Daniel stood nearby, adjusting the power settings and ensuring the system wouldn't overload. "We're almost there," he said, trying to sound reassuring despite the tension in his voice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Rachel gave the order. "Activated," she shouted. The cloaking field hummed to life, spreading out in a shimmering dome over a small section of North America. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the area beneath the dome disappeared from sight. Sensors aboard the Krylos ships registered only empty space where buildings and streets had once been. Varnock roared in fury, his glowing eyes narrowing as he studied the readings. "What trickery is this?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Confused and suspicious, he ordered his fleet to halt the attack and investigate further. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth had a glimmer of hope, but it was fragile, and time was running out. Months passed, and life on Earth continued as usual. Most people were unaware of the tensions brewing in the stars above them. But strange things began happening, things that couldn't be ignored for long. Satellites orbiting Earth started picking up unusual signals. Gravitational anomalies appeared without explanation, tugging at spacecraft and disrupting communication systems. Amateur astronomers around the world reported seeing strange shimmering patterns in the night sky, like ripples on a pond but made of light. Emily Dawson, a journalist known for her curiosity and determination, noticed these reports piling up. She had always been fascinated by space and often wrote articles about humanity's place in the galaxy. This time, though, something felt different. The stories weren't random. They were connected. Emily dug deeper, scouring online forums, scientific journals, and even classified government documents she managed to access through old contacts. What she found chilled her to the bone. There were whispers of alien activity near Earth's orbit, not the friendly kind either. These were signs of something far more dangerous. Emily knew she needed answers, so she reached out to Jacob Carter. He had been quiet since returning from the Galactic Council Summit, avoiding interviews and public appearances. When she finally tracked him down, he agreed to meet her at a small cafe in Washington, D.C. Jacob looked tired when he arrived, his face pale and his eyes shadowed. Emily wasted no time getting to the point. "Jacob," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "What do you know about this?" He opened the folder and froze. Inside were images of the shimmering distortions, graphs showing gravitational spikes, and excerpts from leaked military reports. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he sighed heavily. "It's worse than you think," he admitted. At the summit, there were rumors about a rogue faction planning an attack. No one believed Earth would be targeted. "We're too insignificant." But now, Emily leaned forward, her voice urgent. "But now what? Are we in danger?" Jacob hesitated before answering. "Let's just say I wouldn't rule it out. The Krylos, a warlike species, have been expanding their territory aggressively. They don't care who gets in their way. If they see Earth as weak, well, let's hope it doesn't come to that." Determined to learn more, Emily visited Rachel Monroe next. Rachel was working late in her lab again, surrounded by glowing screens and humming machinery. When Emily explained what she had uncovered, Rachel nodded grimly. "I've seen the data too," she confessed. "The anomalies are real, and if the Krylos are involved, we're running out of time." Rachel led Emily to a secure area of the lab where the cloaking device prototype was housed. It wasn't much to look at, a series of interconnected panels and wires, but its potential was enormous. "This is our best shot," Rachel said. "If we can perfect it, we might stand a chance. But it's not ready yet. Not nearly." Emily stared at the device, her mind racing. "What happens if they attack before you finish?" Rachel didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned back to her workbench, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted a dial. "Then we fight with whatever we have," she said quietly, "and pray it's enough." As Emily left the lab that night, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The stars above seemed colder somehow, less inviting. Back in her apartment, she typed up her notes, piecing together everything she had learned. By morning, her article was ready to publish. It was bold, direct, and impossible to ignore. Is Earth under threat from alien invaders? The response was immediate. Social media erupted with panic and skepticism. Governments scrambled to address the claims, while scientists debated whether the evidence was credible. But amidst the chaos, one thing became clear: Earth's days of being overlooked were over. Whether humanity was ready or not, the galaxy had taken notice. And soon, The consequences would arrive. Jacob Carter returned to Earth with a heavy heart. The mockery he had endured at the Galactic Council meeting replayed in his mind over and over during the long journey home. He couldn't shake the image of Zarnak's smug grin or the dismissive laughter that had filled the chamber. It wasn't just the embarrassment that weighed on him. It was the realization that Earth truly was vulnerable. If an alien force ever decided to attack, humanity would be defenseless. When Jacob landed in Washington, D.C., he was immediately summoned to a private briefing with President Laura Hayes. The president was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened intently as Jacob recounted the events of the summit, her expression growing grimmer with each passing moment. "They laughed at us," Jacob said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Not just politely, openly. They think we're weak, irrelevant. And honestly, they're not wrong. Our defenses are outdated. We need to invest in new technologies, something that can protect us if the worst happens." President Hayes leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers on the polished wooden desk. "Jacob," she began, her tone measured, "you know as well as I do that Earth's resources are stretched thin. We're still recovering from decades of environmental damage and economic instability. Asking for more funding for planetary defense is complicated. But it's necessary," Jacob insisted. "If we don't act now, we'll regret it later. Trust me, Madam President, the galaxy isn't as peaceful as it seems. There are factions out there that wouldn't hesitate to exploit our weaknesses." Hayes sighed, rubbing her temples. "I hear you, Jacob, but convincing the United Nations Defense Committee to allocate more funds won't be easy. They've already rejected similar proposals in the past." Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe was hard at work in her lab in Colorado. Her assistant, Daniel Kim, a young and eager engineer, helped her fine-tune their experimental cloaking technology. The project was based on quantum entanglement, a concept so complex that even some of the brightest minds on Earth struggled to grasp it. But Rachel was determined. She believed this technology could be humanity's salvation. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Daniel looked up from his computer screen. "Do you really think they'll take us seriously this time?" he asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "The committee has shot down every idea we've presented." Rachel paused, her hands resting on the edge of the lab table. "They have to," she replied firmly. "We don't have a choice. If we wait until after an attack to prove ourselves, it'll be too late. This isn't just about science. It's about survival." A few days later, Rachel and Jacob met with the Defense Committee in New York City. Rachel stood before the panel of skeptical officials, explaining the principles behind the cloaking device. She showed them simulations and data, highlighting how the technology could render entire cities invisible to enemy sensors. But as she spoke, she noticed the blank expressions on their faces. "This is fascinating, Dr. Monroe," one senator said finally, "but it's also theoretical. You're asking for billions of credits to fund something that may never work. How do we justify that to the public?" Rachel clenched her jaw, fighting to keep her composure. "With respect, Senator, the cost of doing nothing could be far greater. If an alien force attacks, we won't have the luxury of time to develop this technology. We need to act now." The room fell silent for a moment before another official spoke up. "Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Monroe. We'll take it under consideration." But Rachel knew what those words meant. They were dismissing her, just like the Galactic Council had dismissed Jacob. As she left the meeting, she felt a surge of anger and determination. Humanity might not see the danger yet, but she did. And she wasn't going to give up, no matter how many times they told her no. In the distant future, humanity had finally taken its first steps into the vastness of space. Despite their efforts, Earth remained a small and unimportant planet in the eyes of the galaxy. It was a world still struggling with its own challenges, far behind the advanced civilizations that roamed the stars. Jacob Carter, a young diplomat from North America, stood nervously in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council's flagship station, *Ecliptica*. The room buzzed with the hum of alien voices and the soft glow of holographic displays. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, their forms ranging from sleek, metallic beings to towering creatures with glowing eyes. Jacob adjusted his suit, feeling out of place among the dazzling array of advanced technology. He glanced at Rachel Monroe, a brilliant scientist who had accompanied him to the summit. She stood quietly, her sharp gaze taking in every detail of the room. Rachel's mind was always working, always analyzing. She knew Earth's position in the galaxy was precarious, but she also believed humanity could rise above its limitations, if only they were given a chance. The meeting began, and the leaders of the Galactic Council wasted no time addressing the newcomers. One by one, representatives stepped forward to present updates on their planet's advancements. When it was Earth's turn, Jacob stepped up to the podium. His voice was steady as he spoke about humanity's progress, emphasizing their potential rather than their current weaknesses. But his words were met with laughter. Not just polite chuckles, but outright mockery. "Your defenses are laughable," said Zarnak, a reptilian council member with shimmering green scales, a few satellites and primitive lasers. "You can't even protect your atmosphere from asteroids, let alone defend against an invasion." Other council members joined in, their voices echoing through the chamber. "Earth is a child playing with toys." Another chimed in, "A being made entirely of light. You have nothing to offer the galaxy." Rachel clenched her fists, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She wanted to speak up, to tell them about the work she and her team were doing back home. They were developing groundbreaking technologies, things the galaxy had never seen before, but she knew now wasn't the time. The council wouldn't listen. To them, Earth was insignificant, a speck of dust in the cosmic ocean. As the meeting dragged on, Jacob tried to remain composed, but the weight of the ridicule pressed heavily on him. He thought about the people back home, the billions of humans who looked to him and others like him to represent their hopes and dreams. How would they feel if they knew how the galaxy viewed them? Would they be discouraged, or would they rise to prove the council wrong? When the session finally ended, Jacob approached Rachel in the corridor outside the chamber. "They don't understand," he said, his voice low but firm. "They think we're weak because we're different, but we're not. We've survived wars, plagues, natural disasters. Humanity has a strength they can't comprehend." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Strength isn't enough," she replied. "We need innovation, progress. That's why I've been working on the cloaking project. If we can perfect it, we might stand a chance against anyone who underestimates us." Jacob sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Do you really think it'll work?" "I have to believe it will," Rachel said, her tone resolute. "Because if it doesn't, we're on our own." The two walked in silence for a moment, the enormity of their task sinking in. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. People went about their days unaware of the disdainful glances cast their way by the galaxy's elite. For now, Earth was safe, tucked away in its corner of the cosmos. But Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that their fragile peace wouldn't last forever. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, someone, or something, was watching. And when they came, humanity would need more than hope to survive.